So, whether or not Sartre's account of the human condition is correct or not, uh, it does lead to certain consequences, right? I mean, the idea, I suppose, of the human condition is that our existence precedes our essence. Our existence comes before. Whatever our essence is, which is what we essentially are, what our purpose is, what we are for, what our lives are for, those are things, or that's something that needs to be created by us. And the essential thing is to be created by us without any guidance, so that we cannot lay off the responsibility on any other source. If we are totally free, and that's the idea, that the condition is one of even being condemned to freedom, then whatever choices we make are our own, and we can't lay off the responsibility on anyone else. But this does, and I don't know if that's the true account of the human condition, but certainly is something worth thinking about and has certain compelling aspects to it. But then, of course, it does lead to certain questions of which Sartre is well aware, and that is, well, I guess you can choose anything. This is what he means when he responds to the charges of subjectivism or voluntarism. Subjectivism being, well, I guess all values are only subjective, and that if someone chooses something for themselves, then it must be right, at least for themselves. Or voluntarism, meaning whatever I will is okay for me. And there's something kind of not very acceptable about that, I mean, in the sense that, well, if Dostoevsky said, if God doesn't exist, then anything is permitted, and that doesn't sound quite right, because people do bad things, by our light. People live bad lives. People make wrong choices, but without any kind of authority, any kind of values that are anything but what somebody chooses for themselves, then how could you condemn somebody for whatever they chose? It does lead to certain consequences, seemingly, that are not very benign and perhaps not even very acceptable. And Sartre is quite aware of this, I think. In the latter part of the essay, he deals with this question of how can I judge another? This is page, towards the end, this is page 15. He says, in the second place, people say to us existentialists, you are unable to judge others. This is true in one sense, and false in another. It is true in this sense, that whenever a man chooses his purpose and his commitment in all clearness and in all sincerity, whatever that purpose may be, it is impossible for him to prefer another. That is, that if someone chooses their values in all sincerity and all clarity, perhaps you can't judge them. He says, we can judge nevertheless, for as I have said, one chooses in view of others, and in view of others one chooses himself. One can judge first, and perhaps this is not a judgment of value, but is a logical judgment, that in certain cases, choice is founded upon an error, and in others upon the truth. One can judge a man by saying that he deceives himself. Okay. And we have defined the situation of man as one of free choice, without excuse and without help. Any man who takes refuge behind the excuse of his passions or by inventing some deterministic doctrine is a self-deceiver. Right? So he's already getting somewhere. What's he driving towards? This self-deception is evidently a falsehood because it is a dissimulation of man's complete liberty of commitment. That is, when can we judge? I mean, what would constitute a wrong choice? What would constitute a bad choice in light of the human condition, in which there are no pre-established values that could guide us? They went out along with God for Sartre. Well, a bad choice would be one that is made in bad faith or not made in good faith. He says, I answer, there is no reason why you should not deceive yourself, for instance, but I declare that you are doing so, and that the attitude of strict consistency alone is that of good faith. Furthermore, I can pronounce a moral judgment. Sartre says, well, I do have a basis upon which to judge others morally, for I declare that freedom, in respect of concrete circumstances, can have no other end and aim but itself. And when once a man has seen that values depend upon himself, in that state of forsakenness he can will only one thing, and that is freedom as the foundation of all values. Now, I'm not sure that this gets Sartre out of the predicament, or that anything could, of, who can say, taking away any kind of higher authority, how we're supposed to live, what constitutes good and bad. But at least he's given us some basis for saying that, well, a bad choice would be one in which we denied our responsibility, in which we denied the fact that we were totally free to choose whatever we wanted and therefore needed to take responsibility for it. To deny that responsibility would be to act in bad faith. That is, as he says there, the freedom is the foundation of all values. That is, the awareness of our freedom and therefore our responsibility for ourselves and for who we are. That's the starting point. Now, how you could sort of build on that and provide a kind of a notion of a way of life with some kind of content, every person has to decide that for themselves. And although, I don't know, I mean, is there a basis to judge others on any other basis except that they are not acting in awareness of their freedom? Maybe not, but at least it's something. That is, an authentic human existence is one in which we realize that no one else is responsible for us, but that we're absolutely responsible for ourselves.